So now that we've run our API, we want to save all the changes that we've made so far. So let me come in here, and maybe we don't need this function over here. So I can delete this and replace it with something else. But then we want to save our work as we go along so that we have a history of all the changes that we've made, especially when it comes to writing code, because many people in a team can be working together. So if you want to understand what change one person has made compared to the other person, or compare that to your own work, you want to commit this history into some sort of repository. And that's where GitHub comes in. So if I come into github.com, once you sign up, you'll see a dashboard like this. I can come in here and create a repository. And this is where I'm going to store all my code, if you will. Now, I can come into my VS Code back again, and there should be a source control tab over here. And if you don't see that, you can come into extension and click on this search bar and type git so that you can list all the extensions that you have available there and install one of them. But the chances are you probably already have this in your sidebar. So you can click on this initialize repository. Now, if you don't have that, a good way to start is to come into the GitHub repository, click on new repository, and let me just give this a name. I'll call this University API TUT, and I'll make this a private repository, and that should be good. I will click on create repository. So now we have this repository being set up on github.com. So if you don't have that extension within your VS Code, here are all the commands that you need to understand to initialize and add files into this GitHub repository. Now, GitHub, think of this as saving your work as you go along. So there's nothing too complicated about GitHub. So let's understand these commands that we have here. So git init is just an initialization command. So let me copy this command, come into VS Code. I'll stop this server by hitting Control C, and I'll paste git init. Let's see what this does. Now it says initialized empty repository in this location. And I also have some changes show up in my GitHub tab over here. Now the code tab is exactly the same, nothing has changed, but the GitHub tab has changed. So if I come into my web browser again and look at other commands, so there is git add, which is going to add all the files. So git commit is like giving a name to the work that you've done so far. So this can be you've added a new feature or you've deleted something. So you want to record all this, right? So you can give it a message here. And finally, you want to add a remote, which is this location that we are in, which is University API TUT repository. And you can start pushing your data into the main branch. Now we'll come into what branches mean, what PR requests mean, and other things in a bit, but this is good start for us. So let me just do git add. I'll copy this command and I'll paste it here and also write a dot next to it. So this is going to add everything that is in my directory now. Now we don't want to commit all this venv and pycache and other things which are very local to your machine. So we don't need these files. The main file that we need is the main.py. So instead of just doing a git add dot, what I'll do is I'll create another file called git ignore. So this will ignore some of the files that I'm about to add here. So here I can add .venv and also this pycache as well. So now if I come into my terminal and say git status dot, so you'll see there are only two files that we are going to commit. Now if I remove this pycache and run the same command again, you'll see that pycache is available here, which means these are the files that are going to get added into GitHub. So we'll put all these files into git ignore. And if I run git status now, we are only committing these two files. So this is good. So I'm going to say git add dot. And if I do git status again, you should see them turned into green. And if I come into GitHub tab, now you'll also see that these are under staged changes. Now the next and final step here is to add the remote, which is you're just giving it an address where to push all this code to. So this won't change. So I'll just come in here and press. So that should give us a remote repository now. And I can say git push origin main. Now before pushing all this code into the branch, what we need to do is git commit. So git commit is nothing but like saving your progress so far. So we'll give it a name. I'll just say initialized app. And this, we see that now we have some changes that are committed, or we've saved it with the name. Now I can come in here and say git push origin master, and this will start pushing all that into this URL. And finally, I can come into GitHub and press on refresh, and you see our two files are sitting in here. So if I go to main.py, we see our code here. Now this is the code that you would send to your team or someone else, or if you're working on a different machine, you can go there and browse to this location, get all the code, and be able to run it on that machine.